The U.S. is the world's largest foreign aid donor. Packaging with the USA logo is prevalent in refugee camps and disaster-stricken areas worldwide. Millions of dollars are entrusted to aid agencies so they can provide for the needy. In recent years, some have questioned whether the existing aid distribution structure is achieving its objectives. One such critic is Tori Hogan, the founder and director of Beyond Good Intentions, an organization that produces films and educational programs on the effectiveness of international aid. In her book, Beyond Good Intentions, Ms. Hogan discusses why good intentions alone are insufficient.
Well, I think it really summarizes what I believe about aid is that it's not a lack of good intentions. It's not that there's a lack of people with heart out there who have a desire to give, but there's a lack of understanding of how we do that well. And so, the title just kind of spoke to me of saying this isn't enough to just want to do good for the world, but you have to know how to do good.
Yes. So we can say that so many people around the world have good intentions.
Yes.
They set out to do good things, but they lack
the know-how, sometimes the humility, honestly. There's a lot of assumption about what the world needs, and we see very, very well-intentioned aid organizations kind of imposing their ideas on local communities abroad. And that's proving to be incredibly problematic now that I think more of the international community is stepping back and looking at the aid being offered around the world and saying, wait a second, something's not really adding up here. We're not seeing the impact that this money should have actually made.
You've traveled to different countries, and you've been so close to aid organizations and also to the recipients of the aid. What, in a nutshell, would you say was missing when you made your observation?
I have met with many people. When I made my film series, I met with over 60 aid organizations in 10 different countries and hundreds of recipients. And the thing that kept coming up over and over again was that they never asked us what we wanted. They never asked what was needed. And there was this, again, imposition of ideas. If there's not local ownership and really a local conception of the project, and then also, of course, locally led, it's not going to be sustainable in the long run.
But how can this be done? We know that the international aid organizations own the funding because they solicit these funds and they get them. They have the confidence that they can manage these funds properly. They have the infrastructure to, disperse these funds. How can you have local ownership in this kind of a scenario?
Well, it's a great question. It's because the current industry, the aid industry, is run by the donors, not by the people that we're serving. And so the only person you have to be accountable to is the person that is giving you the money. And with that, there's no real feedback loop. So you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to have local ownership when they don't actually have a vested stake in the money and the projects being offered. It's going to require an incredible transformation of the way that aid is done in general, and it's going to have to require the donors to be the ones to step up and say, our priorities are not number one, even though we're signing the check. The real priority is doing the good work, and that means making sure that we're accountable to the people that we're helping.
So what is your prescription? How do you go about making this aid work for the people that it's intended to work for?
It's a difficult question. It's one that I wrestle with in the book, and I think you can see that as I go from Kenya to Uganda to Rwanda, trying to figure out what's working and what's not. So I can't say that I have the final answer yet, but what I'm noticing is that a lot of times it's a resource issue. So it's not that there's a lack of ideas in the field among these local communities, it's that they don't have the money to pull it off. And it's not that they don't know what they want or what they need. They certainly know how to care for their own families and their own communities. But we need to find better ways to get the money onto the ground. And that's a tricky thing because there's such trust issues usually. We're inundated with stories of, corruption and waste and money going to the chief's brother, instead of actually going to the people that need it. And until we find ways to really have effective tools for evaluating how the aid goes from, the donor down to the ground, I feel like we're going to continue to have those trust issues, and that's quite an issue.
And on the side of the donor agencies, sometimes I get a sense that there's a competition to give, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But in that confusion, does anybody stop to say, how can we better coordinate this and make sure that we achieve the maximum benefit on the ground?
That's a great point. And the key word there is coordination, which doesn't happen nearly enough. And we've seen it in some of the bigger aid disasters in recent years. We saw in the tsunami in Indonesia and then again in Haiti, and it was like this complete lack of coordination. And people on the outside said, why aren't you all working together? Why is this so difficult? Well, the reason is because of the donor structure, I think. It's because the donors have, a lump sum of money that everybody is competing for. So Save the Children is going after the same money that CARE is, and they have no reason to collaborate when that's the situation.
Well, that was Tori Hogan, founder and director of Beyond Good Intentions, speaking with us on In Focus. Tune in to tomorrow as In Focus for part 2 of my conversation with author Tori Hogan.